All right, welcome everyone. We are recording this so that we can show this later. It'll be available for folks who couldn't come to any of these sessions. Before I hand it over to the transformation team who's going to be doing the whole presentation, could we open with a word of prayer, please? Most gracious God, we give you thanks for the life of this church that has brought us all together. This church that we love, where we have grown in our knowledge and love of you, and we pray that we might listen for your voice so that we can all discern together the church you're calling us to be, so that generations to come can grow in their knowledge and love of you here. We ask your blessing on this time. We give you thanks for the transformation team and the work that they have done. Guide our conversation today in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. And I am going to hand it over to Rich Loomis, who will start with the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'll start with a brief introduction. Some of you may know me, some maybe less so. So my name is Rich Loomis. My family and I started attending St. John's since shortly before the pandemic. We had just moved here in early 2018, and we're looking for a church home. Our relocation was sort of a big move from the West Coast to the East Coast, and at the time we had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. So it was as if that wasn't daunting enough. When we got here, we needed to find a new church home. I'm admittedly a little bit of an introvert, and so trying to go out and visit new churches was a challenge for me, and not only for me, but our family too, with 2 little ones. So we visited a few churches in the area, and admittedly, we didn't find the right one until we visited St. John's, and that was the beginning of something special. I can still remember the moment when we walked in, and Virginia Holt greeted us very warmly with bags for the little ones, saying, "We have a nursery if you'd like to take them downstairs, but they're most welcome to stay with us and worship with us in the sanctuary." And I'll tell you, that was very different than some of the other churches that we visited. And so from that moment, from that very first moment, it really was for us as a family the start of something special. St. John's since then has been a place that we have found our church family, and a place where we could grow in our faith, be nurtured spiritually, and contribute to a meaningful mission. Which brings us to St. John's. Since its founding in 1892, St. John's has been a cornerstone of faith, fellowship, and community. A place where people come to feel God's presence, to grow in their faith, and to connect with one another in a warm and welcoming congregation, kind of like we're gathered this morning. This mission has remained steadfast, even as the world around us has changed. Yet today, like all mainline Protestant churches, St. John faces a shifting cultural landscape. Across the U.S., Christian church membership has been steadily declining, a trend that's accelerated in recent years. In fact, we learned of a recent statistic during our work that today church attendance across the U.S. is 85% of what it was before the pandemic. A sobering reminder of the challenges that lie ahead for all Christian churches, but also for St. John's. But with every challenge comes an opportunity. St. John's has a chance to build on its deep roots and rich traditions, growing and evolving to meet the needs of our current members, while welcoming those who've yet to find their spiritual home. This moment calls us to reflect, adapt, and act with purpose. Recognizing this, you all commissioned the transformation team to define a new path forward, one that would make St. John's even more welcoming, vibrant, and connected to our mission. This is the why of our work. It's guided us every step of the way, serving as our North Star through a year of deep reflection, maybe even a little more than a year, of deep reflection, extensive research, and prayerful discernment. Our work followed 3 phases, and I think maybe we have a slide on this. Yep. Open up, that was the first phase. This was a time of learning and reflection. We read books like Simon Sinek's Start With Why to challenge our perspectives and focus on our mission. The idea was that through reading and discussion, we could prepare ourselves to think differently and consider the future of St. John's with fresh eyes. Admittedly, this phase took 3 or 4 months, and during the process, it's like we just want to get to the meat of the work. We just want to get there. But looking back, it was so important to help us all align, to help us all think and be open to new ideas and fresh ways of thinking. The second step was explore out. This was where we took some time to go out beyond our walls. We visited 3 churches in the area, both contemporary and traditional, to gain inspiration and learn how other congregations in the area that are thriving work. We visited 3, as I mentioned, 3 churches specifically. One was Victory Church, which is a contemporary church with an evangelical kind of angle, very modern. We visited the Dwelling Place, which was sort of a combination of contemporary and traditional. It was more of a contemporary worship service, but in a traditional setting. And the third was Grace Presbyterian Church in Jenkintown. This is a Presbyterian church that is more traditional, but doing a lot of new and different things, and also thriving as a congregation. We also did some inward exploration. So we, as the transformation team, visited St. John's as if it were our first time visiting the church. So we tried as best we could to visit it in through fresh eyes, like which door would we go in if we didn't know which door to go in, things like that. We also invited some friends who aren't members or hadn't previously attended St. John's to visit St. John's as a secret shopper, if you will, and give us feedback on what they saw and what they learned. Our goal was to view St. John's as guests or prospective new members might see it. And in doing so, we gained a lot of insight on how we might make our church even more welcoming. The third phase, and the most important phase, and frankly energizing phase, was discern in. This was where we brought everything together. All of the probably 9 months worth of foundational work, things started to come together. And what was really, for me, rewarding about that is how aligned all of the members of the transformation team were. We all brought our unique ideas and thinking, but in fact, there was one Saturday where we had an on-site offsite here at St. John's, where we put poster boards across the Keene room and just started writing down ideas in different areas, and the papers just filled up. But as I was looking at them, it was remarkable how we all thought these are just all great ideas, and there wasn't a single thing where it's like, oh, we wouldn't want to do that. And so that time spent getting ready for this final phase was so critically important. Through that process, we prayerfully developed and refined this proposal, which we're going to discuss this morning, aiming to reflect what we believe is God's vision for St. John's. We can move to the next slide. At the heart of our work has been one simple but profound question. How can St. John's reflect Christ's love in every interaction, in every detail, in every moment shared within and beyond these walls? With this question as our guide, we crafted a vision that grounds all of our recommendations. St. John's Presbyterian Church is a welcoming community where all can experience and share God's love. We anchored this vision in 4 key pillars. The first, welcoming and inclusion. The second, community and engagement. The third, spiritual vibrancy. And the fourth, outreach and service. Each recommendation in our proposal is guided by these themes, connecting our vision to practical steps that we believe will help St. John's grow and thrive. Move to the next slide, please. Through our work, we identified 7 key areas of focus that we'll be walking through with you this morning in detail. The first is welcoming and community. The second, worship and music, faith formation and spiritual growth, outreach and mission, marketing and publicity, as well as community engagement, administration and organizational life, and last but not least, facilities. Well, much of our work centered on the why and the what. We also spent some time discussing the how, and we'll cover that at the end as we wrap up. Our hope is that through these efforts, St. John's can become not just a church you attend, but a place where you truly belong. A place where, as my family and I experienced on that first Sunday, people can walk in and feel immediately welcomed and know they found a spiritual home. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who's going to walk us through our recommendations on how we can continue to foster a welcoming experience and strengthen our community. Jim, over to you.
Well done, Rich.
Thank you.
5. Ready to start there?
Yep. Good morning, folks. Thank you for coming out today, and thank you for your interest in hearing what we've been doing. We're going to talk about welcoming a community. Rich touched on this a little bit. We had some secret shoppers coming in, and when people visit St. John's, their experiences begin the moment they enter the driveway. Psychiatrists have found that first impressions are formed within the first 7 seconds. So we took that and kind of visualized somebody getting out in the back and finding the right door to go in. So we're trying to change that in some manner. So the way the congregation and the church buildings welcome visitors sets a tone and plays a critical role in helping people experience God's presence and love within the community. To this end, we want to create an atmosphere that is gracious, welcoming, and caring to all who enter. While St. John's does bring quite a bit to the table, we have a charming historic feel. The Sunday morning greeters you're welcome the minute you walk through the door. A caring congregation, friendly congregation, and then our moment for greeting is quite a scene some mornings. And I think we would all agree to that. And we haven't experienced that in any other church that we visited. So that's kind of a homegrown thing here. I'll give St. John's credit for that one. So our recommendations include redesign of the main entrance. You want to flip to the next slide there? Thank you. So visiting Grace Presbyterian, this is a simple, very attractive way to let people know, hey, here's where you enter. So what we're proposing is that we would put that awning right out here, and this door right here would become the main entrance into the church. So coming out of the back parking lot, people would know exactly which door to enter. Now, the regulars, of course, are going to walk up the driveway against the traffic and do their thing. But new visitors will come in here, ideally. So you may have noticed we have Alex Ingetta down here quite a bit. So Alex volunteers to greet, and he loves it. So make sure you say good morning to Alex when you come through the door. So slide 6, we're here already. Okay, so see the photos of Grace. And then we've talked about this by emphasizing this, people know where to go. Slide 7, Patrick. So we need to redesign this signage out here. There's no way to put announcements on there. There's no way to say what's coming up. It's just not utilized properly, and you can see here it's overgrown. So we had to wait for that picture until the bushes grew to really say, hey, you're right. We got to change this thing. So anyway, so that's one of our quick missions, if you will. Then go ahead to the next slide. So we want to add some kind of welcoming, this type of signage coming down the driveway. I don't know if you've ever noticed people come into our driveway and this parking lot's jammed and they just kind of freeze. They'll stop right there, not realizing that there's more parking down around. They get there and like, okay, we got plenty of room. So we want to just emphasize that. Go to the next slide, please. Interior signage. I come here every Friday morning for a men's breakfast, and it was pointed out, as we come through, as we're regulars in here, we come through and we're kind of numb to a lot of stuff. But one of the guys that was there yesterday pointed out that we have a sign on our back door that says, "This is the back door." And you have to check it out on your way out. I'm like, thank you for laughing. I was very amused by that. But anyway, I mean, it might be for the kids. I don't want to know. I don't want to. Well, whatever. I'll let that alone. So anyway, so what we want to try to do is come in with a little bit more professional signage. Make it very, very visible. Bathrooms are here, elevators in the back, the nurseries. Just help people get to the sanctuary, because if we're going to make this the main entrance, you're lost. You don't have a clue how to get there. So we're going to have to, give some visuals to help people get upstairs and get to that. So let me just catch up here. I'm on slide 8.
This is 9.
I'm on slide 9. I'm gonna have to flip the page. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, and then slide 10. So then, coming back here to the greeting, coming through the door here. So we want to create some kind of a more welcoming atmosphere. I'm going to get into this whole area. We're not proposing, setting a sofa right inside the door. That would kind of get in the way, but we just want to set up a table. We want people to come through the door, be greeted, have the kits for the kids, have name tags. We'd like to try to get back to some name tags. That would be very helpful. That's overemphasized there, but you can see how cool that is. That's really, really nice. And you come walking in the front door, and that's way in the back wall there. So it is a nice touch. Go to the next sign, or the next slide, excuse me. So talking about Fellowship Hall, we have great bones here. This is a great room, and I know we utilize it for a lot of different things, but what we want to start doing is we want to try to bring in some comfortable seating. High top tables is something that Rich has talked about quite a bit, and I like that idea where you can just stand and share a cup of coffee. We want to get people to mingle a little bit more. We started putting out tables, and that works, and people do sit down, but it's just not cool. I mean, they're something a little bit more something a little bit more eye-catching. So, back in those corners, we could easily set up little seating areas. We want to talk about a child child area where they can stay busy while mom and dad are talking. So that would be a real bonus, and Rich with the young children would really appreciate that. Next slide.
I'm always worried they're going to run into someone.
Yeah, with the coffee, right? Exactly. So this one is just, here again, just some more images of warming up the space. Again, we're back inside of Victory, and you got to see this place. It's what's the name of the Mascara, the garbage people, okay, where they have their big building. A chunk of that is cut in half, and they put in this church. So you walk in, you're like, you have no idea what you're walking into, and then it's this. So it's pretty impressive, but when you get inside, but it's kind of bizarre driving up to it. So, but anyway, that seems to be we have kids all over the country, and these more non-traditional churches, they're in strip centers, they're in warehouses, they're all over the place. So, hang on, I'm rambling here. Go to the next slide. This is some more spaces in different churches. I like this kind of seating. This is kind of what we're talking about, just some comfortable stuff. Things that can be moved. It's got to be able to move. We have exercise classes here. We have Supper St. John's. And then the next slide. Oh, that's not me, so I'm done. That is me, but I'm not. That's not my slide. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Alrighty. Okay, you'll notice we're all working from scripts. We have scripted this pretty carefully. We have so many meetings, we want to be sure we tell everybody the same thing. So bear with us, please. So worship is the primary time and place in a church where people have a chance to experience God, to open themselves to Christ's transforming power, and to lay the foundation for a life of love and compassion. Worship sets the church apart from other organizations in the community that provide fellowship and services to the community. And to that end, we are suggesting some ways in which we can enhance our already spiritually enriching worship in order to reach a greater variety of people and to connect with our existing members even more deeply. So we're not trying to fix anything. Nothing's wrong, right? We're just trying to make what we have better and more accessible. So first of all, we'd like to find ways to further engage members in worship services. Our services, as we do them now, are primarily listening experiences. And many people don't learn simply by listening. If you've ever watched me in a meeting, I take notes copiously. I learn by writing things down. I listen and I write, and then I remember. If I only listen, I often don't learn and remember. So we recommend, and I think we can go to the next slide, Patrick. We recommend installation of large digital screens that can be easily seen from all sections of the sanctuary. These screens can display hymns, other song lyrics, scriptures, images, videos, announcements, and other visuals to enhance and support the worship experience. Not to replace the materials we already have in the sanctuary, like the bulletins, the Bibles, the hymnals, but rather to allow for a more creative worship experience. The AV system that we have may need to be upgraded to support this, so just, it's a big package. I think we can go on then. Right, okay. We'd like to adapt the worship space and service materials to be more family friendly and more inclusive. For example, reevaluate, reimagine, and redesign the supplemental materials that are available to attendees to make the services more engaging and more accessible to all ages and abilities. And I think we can go to the next slide, Patrick. Now these, we're not suggesting that we install praise band. Don't misunderstand this. This is what some other churches do. There are some aspects of that we find attractive, but we'll get into that. Let's go to the next slide.
This is the last one for this section. Next is faith formation.
Okay. So, rather than asking families with small children to adapt to the traditional space that we have, that's dominated by pews designed for adults, and you know from your own experience, those pews are not necessarily the most comfortable places to sit. We think we should consider creating space within the sanctuary where families can sit in flexible and appropriately sized seating. Not necessarily the entire sanctuary, but a portion of it that we can designate as a family-friendly area. We'd like to consistently make explicit connections between the music and the message or theme of the worship service. You've probably noticed that Patrick and Ridgely and Joy Messengers, when they sing, try to introduce some of the music and tell why it's important for that moment and that point in the worship. We'd like to do that very consistently. We'd like to provide even more diversity and variety of musical experiences, styles, and approaches. Our current style, as you well know, is very traditional. Growing churches that have that attract younger members also offer more contemporary music. So we'd like to find ways to bring more contemporary music into worship. And finally, we think we should consider a new hymnal that includes more contemporary options for the hymns and the communal singing that we do. And these recommendations around the music have been shared with the search committee for the new music director. So we're trying to build that into the search with everyone that we speak to. And that is the end of my part.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
As I was considering what I would say today about faith formation and spiritual growth, I realized this section is really about connecting with one another. If you look around our congregation, many of the members first came through a small group or program that the church was offering. Personally, I found St. John's through the phone book, and I love the services, but it wasn't until I attended a couple of events where I was able to get to know people that I decided to join. One of the things that we have found that growing churches do is to provide ways for visitors and members to connect in small groups. Victory in particularly has a robust program of what they call life groups and focuses a lot of their energy making sure that people sign up for a group based on different themes. Each period lasts a few weeks, and then members can sign up again for the same group or a new one. Victory also has an annual day for volunteering, which is a big way they get new members. People feel more comfortable saying, "Would you like to come do this service project with me?" instead of saying, "Would you like to come to my church?" At St. John's, we have a history of small groups, including Bible study, men's groups, women's book groups, youth groups. We once had a social justice group. The Joy Messengers is actually a small group. Bell Choir, a gardening club. The Pillowcase once a month is an unofficial small group. You get the idea. Where are we missing people? How are we feeding those that can't make it to Wednesday night supper or an early Sunday morning Bible study, or maybe that doesn't quite seem like the right fit for them? We need to consider how we are feeding people at different stages of their lives and what will help them grow. For example, when I had school-age kids, there were more opportunities for moms to get together. I especially remember a women's retreat held at Freedom Center in Valley Forge and rooming with Jen Neely. She and I were friends, but this was where we really got to know other ladies in the church, and I became a lot closer to Jen, and she is one of my, even though she's moved away, she is still one of my very best friends to this day. Having that connection made it much more likely that I would attend church, because I always knew that there was someone to talk with and that I wouldn't feel awkward. To that end, having a mentorship or connection program for visitors and new members would be beneficial. Historically, we have had mission trips, including after Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy and other places where they were needed to help be the hands of God. I have been on, am I messing you up, Nancy Higgins? Okay, all right. Sorry. I have been on a mission trip with the youth to Puerto Rico, and it was such a fantastic and moving experience. After Helene, there will be a lot of need in Appalachia. Could we consider sending a group down to clean and rebuild when the time is right? Perhaps we could join with another local church to make this happen. A few weeks ago, Sue Chuddy, Stella Urbina, and I attended a women's retreat held by Covenant Pres. It's been a long time since St. John's hosted one, and the experience of going to Montreat a year ago with the St. John's ladies reminded me how important renewal can be. It was a restorative day, lovely to be connected with other Presbyterian women, and yet is also something we could be doing here at St. John's. COVID certainly put a halt to programming for a while, but now we have an opportunity to rebuild and consider what directions we want to go in. By trying new ways to mix up groups, such as pulling numbers for table seating, we allow people to get to know one another better who might not otherwise cross paths. What is God calling us to do here at St. John's? We need to be willing to experiment with new ideas and make sure that we are reaching the full range of ages and needs of those who attend. Connecting with other churches for larger events can enhance member opportunities. Gathering intergenerationally helps build relationships. Meeting people where they are on their faith journey helps them to grow spiritually as individuals and also as a church.
I don't need to convince any of you of the importance of mission and outreach here at St. John's. Following Jesus' instruction to serve others has long been central to our identity as a church and to our budget commitments. Our outreach committee regularly arranges for hands-on service projects. They have researched and selected a variety of organizations for us to support financially, and they, as much as possible, bring representatives from those organizations in to talk with us about the work they're doing. So essentially our first recommendation is just to build on the work that we're already doing in this area, offer more opportunities for service here at the church and also in the community. And as you heard from Lauren, that can help us lead to partnerships with other organizations to develop these kinds of opportunities. Also a great way to invite a friend to come and serve next to you and have some fun and get to know us in an informal way. Lauren mentioned that we've also stepped back from offering mission trips in the last few years, partly from COVID, but partly because of our numbers. And we'd like to see the return of those because we know it's a really good way for people to develop a relationship with others in the church while serving and fulfilling our mission. Our hope that we could offer opportunities for youth, for adults, and for intergenerational groups, and partnering with other churches is an ideal way to do that. So we would encourage the development of those partnerships. We also recommend that whenever possible, we open our facilities to external groups. Making good use of the spaces that we've been blessed with is an important way for us to connect with and serve others in the community. You may have noticed the activity in the Carriage House this morning. T&E Care is having their holiday drive here once again with us. And over the course of 5 days, there'll be more than 100 volunteers and donors stopping by, coming through here. If you encounter somebody in the parking lot, say hello, welcome them, make them feel very glad to be here. A few of you I know will remember that we had an opera company here a few weeks ago rehearsing for a performance. That enabled a new group to get to know us, and those of us who attended their final rehearsal had a unique opportunity to see how a performance like that comes together. Maybe a crazy plot, but it was a very interesting experience. This last recommendation was brought up in the discussion of outreach and mission, but I want to make it clear that it applies across the board to all areas of our church life. We hope to create what we're calling a culture of permission, meaning that when someone has an idea for a new service project or a group that they would like us to consider supporting, or a suggestion that would make our building more accessible or better organized or more welcoming, that we should start by looking for ways to say yes to that request, as opposed to reflexively saying, we'll think about that, or focusing on the difficulties of why it might be hard to make that happen. Encouraging the congregation to bring their ideas to various committees, it helps all of us to feel that we have a personal investment in the life of St. John's. These recommendations aren't meant to be the sole responsibility of the outreach committee. They can be a willing partner for many different groups within the church, and we have ideas for ways we can better serve others. A few weeks back, you might remember the Cleanup Bucket Project. That was sort of a joint venture between outreach and our youth groups. And after that, pretty quickly came the Lunch and Learn program. That was developed by Ridgely and Lynn Hay and the Faith Formation Group. But the discussion that day was about food insecurity, and that ties in beautifully with several of the organizations that we support as a church, including the Paper Mill Food Hub and the Greenhouse Project, which are both in Kensington. I just want to leave you with one thought, and it's a theme you'll hear going through all of our presentations, that in the course of our discussions, we really came to realize that the biggest component of outreach for us is our worship service. And we want to make, it's the best way we have of really helping people to feel that they can grow in God's love and feel God's presence. And so any outreach effort we undertake should consider worship as a starting point before we move on. Now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Tall people. Okay. Good morning, folks. My job is to talk to you a little bit about the recommendations around marketing, publicity, and community engagement. My day job is as the marketing and communications director for a small Quaker school in the area. I have been doing that work for 16 years. When I first came to that school, I was their very first professional marketing director that they had. At the time, I was greeted with a little bit of suspicion and kind of like, do we really need this? This seems kind of unseemly, this marketing thing that we want to do. We're a great organization. Won't people just come because we're awesome, right? I can certainly tell you that 16 years later, I don't know of even a school or a small community organization that doesn't spend at least some serious time and effort on their marketing and communications. Also, back in the day, marketing was really thought of as advertising and publicity. Plant ads and write stories for newspapers. That was pretty much all I was expected to do. My role has grown so much over 16 years. I really think of myself as the chief storyteller for the organization. And that authentic storytelling, sharing with the community, both in terms of who you already have within your organization and those you wish to reach, that's the kind of authentic marketing that we're recommending for St. John's. And that starts with the formation of a new team or committee. We are recommending that St. John's form a marketing team or committee that would be a permanent entity that would include some folks who have expertise in areas of marketing, as well as folks who are just interested in participating, and that team should really develop a strategic plan around marketing for St. John's and continue to help to manage whatever initiatives come from that plan. So that's sort of the starting place. Our first recommendation for that team would be that they start by taking a serious look at the brand and messaging that we currently have around the school. You can see on the screen our current logo and tagline. And what we suggest is that this committee take the lead in taking a look at that. Does it need to be updated? Does it need to be changed? Is it as inclusive as we'd like it to be? Does it represent the new vision that we are suggesting for the church? We are not suggesting that what it needs to be or that it needs to necessarily hugely change, but these kinds of things really have a shelf life of about 5 to 10 years, and I can tell you this is at least 15 years old. So it's time to take a serious look at this. Next slide, please. Once that work is done and that foundational piece of the brand and the messages is kind of reestablished or updated, we are recommending that the church take a look at its website and marketing materials and update those pieces, both to reflect that new brand, but also to reflect, again, the direction that we want to take the church. In terms of the website, again, those tend to have a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years before you need to kind of take a good look. When I spoke to Patrick, I think we're over that lifespan by a little bit. And so really, we want to take a look, we want to make sure that we are on a solid hosting foundation, that we are incorporating the best user experience, technology and approaches, that we have solid, interactivity, and that really we look at the architecture and make sure that what people really need is front and center. And that's just something you should be doing generally with your website, but every 3 to 5 years you should take a little bit of a more serious look. And certainly as we are recommending kind of an overhaul of the marketing, now's a good time to incorporate that as well. We'd like to also look at the collateral materials. Anything that we hand out to visitors or anything in print, that should also get updated. And we would love to include some really cool St. John's swag in that, because we would love for you to wear, carry, drink your coffee out of something that would bring some pride and share your love for St. John's with folks who see you. Another critical piece of modern marketing is social media. That's reality. In my work, I know that our families are really connecting with us, particularly on Instagram. We are consistently getting prospective families and friends and people who are learning about our school connect with us first, sometimes, by following our Instagram. And so we think that St. John's, if we're wanting to attract particularly some younger folks, we need to really lean into developing our social media. And so that requires a content plan. That requires some managers to make sure that those pieces are routinely fed, right? The worst thing on a social media platform that you can do is post something and then nothing happens for 4 months, right? You have to have a consistent cadence of posting. So we're suggesting that the church start with Facebook and Instagram. I believe we already have those channels, but really creating some consistent flow of information there, and even some advertising there as well. And then, as the marketing team feels comfortable with that cadence and we're really able to feed those channels, we can explore others. We can look at TikTok, we can look at other kinds of things as we go, as long as we have a solid content plan to keep it going. There are certainly other things that marketing team may come up with and may want to explore, but this is where, as a transformation team, we recommend that we start in this area. Thanks.
Making sure the people that will watch this video can see my face. But to prove my point of what I'm going to talk about, I couldn't print this morning. Our Wi-Fi connection is not always working consistently, and the printer wasn't working today. So I'm using my computer. Anyway, that's kind of why I'm doing this. So the area I'm talking about is administration and organization. Sounds a little boring, sounds a little hard. I think this will be an area that some structure, some cultures need to change a little bit more than we might like, but it's an opportunity for us to grow. So as we go through this, I kind of look at this as the bones of our proposal, because a lot of these things that other people have talked about can't happen if we don't have some of the structures in place to support that. And so we've looked at some of the things that we think need to be considered as we start to implement this. The first and foremost is reevaluating the church's committee structure. It is hard. It is hard because everybody knew this is what Christian Ed did. So we want to call it faith formation. Nobody knows what faith formation does. So we call it Christian Ed again, and we always back to the same committees. So it's harder than you think. But the idea of the proposal and the ideas that we have are not to add on to our existing committees. They are to work with our existing committees, maybe renaming a committee, but how do we, maybe there's things that we've been doing, we've always done them that way, maybe we don't need to always do them that way. Relook at what we're asking our committees to do without adding a bunch of work onto them, but bringing in some new ideas. So that is one of the things we'll be working with Session on doing. The second is the communication process, platforms, and connectivity. My complaint as I got up here. And I just heard that there was a group over in Carriage House that could not get an internet connection this week when they were here as our guest. They had to use their phones and do hotspots because our Wi-Fi doesn't work over there. So we really need to take a look at our technology and connectivity and the platforms we're using. They need to be working. If we're gonna ask people to come in, we're gonna offer online Zoom classes. We have people watching our service, streaming all the time. We need to make sure that equipment is working. So we're gonna have to invest in that. And along with that, when we talk about platforms, Lisa talked about social media, and that's kind of an outward facing, but we also need to look at some inward facing communication. So how do we communicate with one another? Do we need a private Facebook page where somebody can say, hey, I'm having surgery this week, or how you did on surgery, or whatever, where we just, but it's private, it's within the church family that we talk about that. So we may have two Facebook pages, one for us inside the church and one for reaching out and marketing to others. The third is improve the options for donating and giving to the church. Just like with some of the worship ideas and other things, we've already implemented some of this. We now have online giving, which we didn't when we started this process. So that's already in place. People can go to that site and make a recurring donation, so it just happens automatically, or they can make a one-time donation. They can do it through credit card, through their bank account. There's all kinds of ways. So we've already improved that. We want to make it a little bit easier. Most of the churches we visited had a QR code. If you know what that is, that's that little funny looking symbol on things in the pew. So somebody sits down in the pew, I forgot my envelope. You scan that, you make your donation, it's there. You don't have to remember to go home and write it again. So that's one thing we're going to be looking at, using those kind of things. Also, along with giving to the church, probably start talking about some legacy giving. There's opportunities in your wills as you prepare those to leave something to the church. A lot of people do. We have a lot of memorial funds, and they help do those special projects that we need and different things within the church. So we want to make sure that people are aware of that opportunity as well. Finally, creating a pipeline for church leadership. You know, every time the nominating committee has to get together, they're like, well, these people all served before, and who are we going to get to do it this time? And they're so tired. So we want to come up with a way to start nurturing people into leadership positions. And what exactly that looks like, I'm not sure, but at least bringing people onto your committee. Don't be a committee of one. If you're running a committee and doing something, invite other people to work with you so that they'd be the people you'd go to automatically to say, hey, can you take this over? My term's expired, and we need somebody to do that. So we want to start being more proactive in doing that. And I think that's it for administration and organization. I'm going to hand it over to Steve. We'll talk about facilities.
Thanks, Nancy. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
I know you've suffered through, well, not suffered, but you've gone through at least 6 of the categories. Bad choice. This is the exciting category of facilities. No, I just want to give you an overview of some of the discussions we've had about facility improvements. As you've heard in the earlier portions of the presentation, the transformation team is mindful of the following 3 things. The challenges today facing mainline churches, mainline Christian churches, and the need to intentionally provide an environment that's welcoming to all, including those who are seeking to know Christ. Secondly, we're very well aware of the many good aspects of our church community. As some of you may know, we've been members here since 1989, just before Ernie finished up and before Victor came in. And we've seen a lot of good in this church over the years. The third thing that we're aware of is the willingness for us to take a thoughtful look at all aspects of our church in order to enhance how people experience and share God's love. To that end, we know that the architecture and aesthetics of our building and property profoundly influence how people experience and share God's love, and that outdated or poorly designed spaces can hinder such connection, while thoughtful inviting environments inspire and energize our community. Thus, we recommend that St. John's intentionally redesign and enhance its spaces to better support worship and foster community engagement now and in the future. So some of the specific recommendations. First and foremost, we need to retain an architect and other experts with experience in renovating and updating church spaces to help us determine what renovations and updates are possible, practical, and cost-effective for us. In addition to the earlier mentioned facility improvements such as designing a new main entrance and reimagining Fellowship Hall, some of the other renovations being considered include, but are not necessarily limited to, the following four main categories that I'm going to just go over real quickly. First, in the sanctuary, note that a number of these recommendations tie back to the items that we were discussing earlier, particularly in the music and worship discussion. Opening the pulpit area in a way that preserves its character while updating it for a more modern and accessible worship style. 2, introducing flexible seating options, which include family-friendly accessible spaces by replacing some of the pews with flexible seating options. 3, installing and using digital signs and upgrading our AV system. And 4th, evaluating the HVA system to reduce noise and upgrading the lighting to enhance a brighter and more modern sanctuary. Next page, please. The second main area is the other main building upgrades and renovations that we've talked about. The first is relocating the church administrative offices and reception to the first floor of the carriage house to increase security and to open up options in the main building for more community space. 2, transforming other areas on the second floor into vibrant and flexible community spaces, including a quiet zone for families and nursing moms where they can watch the service via live stream. And 3rd, updating the cane room to be more comfortable and welcoming for church meetings and as a space for outside groups to use when not occupied for church activities, and including better technology integration, as Nancy well pointed out. The third area is the carriage house. Modernizing the community space on the main floor of the carriage house so that it's more user-friendly for church events and can attract external groups as a potential source of income. Secondly, considering the addition of a front porch to the carriage house facing Berkeley Road to provide usable outdoor space for church events, concerts, and fellowship, and also attract outside groups for use for gatherings. And then the fourth area in terms of the facility improvements is what I'll just rope in and call other church campus-wide upgrades. As has been mentioned earlier, upgrading the Wi-Fi and connectivity across all of our church buildings. 2, installing new doors, outer doors, with modern windows to create a more modern and inviting atmosphere. 3, installing a more modern and secure access system to the church buildings. Lord knows we want to get away with trying to track down keys. In fact, my wife just turned back one of her keys the other day, and it's the old one that has the metal tag on it. And I think the receptionist said, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. It's been around a while. Back to her days when she was working on the carriage house renovation. And then also installing digital screens in other areas for meetings and study. And then lastly, adding faith and community-centered art to the walls within our church buildings. And then lastly, and very importantly, we will need to consider different options for funding the renovations. That may include grants, fundraising events, as well as a capital campaign. Thank you, and now we're going to get into the how and a little bit of wrap up and then some Q&A. Thank you.
We're on the home stretch. As we wrap up, I want to share a few reflections on how we envision the implementation of this proposal. So we've talked a lot about the why and the what. Now let's talk just a little bit about the how. We recommend creating a dedicated task force for each of the 7 areas that we've discussed. Each task force or committee will be led by a chair with relevant expertise, along with a session representative to ensure that there's clear alignment across all of the groups. So just to be clear, we're looking for the chair of each of these groups to be someone that has a passion for or aptitude, experience for the particular area that they're leading. And this may or may not be the session members. In some cases, maybe it is. In other cases, maybe not. But the session member is really meant to be the conduit and the glue that's going to help hold all of these together through the forum of session. These groups will dive deeper into each of the various areas, adapting the recommendations where needed and developing new ideas to address any emerging challenges. The session, again, will take the lead in coordinating efforts across all of the groups and be responsible for ensuring that they're all progressing. Note that they may not all progress in a linear fashion. Some, we may choose to prioritize the work of some groups at some points versus others, and through the course of our work, we learned that there are dependencies in the work of some of the groups. Like, for example, we may need a new website and marketing before some of the other outreach and mission work can actually happen. So we have to be very thoughtful around how we roll things out, and it'll be the responsible of those session representatives to really be thinking about how we coordinate all of the effort. In terms of timeline, I don't want to get into the exact details here because this is really per session, but I think we're looking to get really going in earnest in the new year. In this way, by forming these groups, our entire congregation can become stakeholders in this transformation process and actively contribute to St. John's growth and mission. After today's session, we'll be handing out a full proposal that goes into much more detail. What you've heard this morning is just a snapshot of what's in the full proposal. So I do encourage you to grab one of these on the way out and take some time to review. It's important, though, to step back and see this proposal not as a prescriptive checklist, but rather a blueprint. We've covered a lot this morning. And so focus not so much on the specifics, but the broader themes of welcoming, community, and growth. Our suggestions span a range of size, effort, and impact. Some of the things can be implemented right away, while others will take some time, and some may not even become priorities at all. As Steve mentioned, we also may have to think about how we fund some of these initiatives. One of the encouraging aspects of our work is a lot of what we've identified are actually either relatively small efforts and or small in cost, which is really great and can have some outsized impact. But some of our recommendations are bigger, either in terms of commitment and resources and also at times capital. We also recognize that new ideas are going to emerge along the way, and so we need to really ensure that we are open and flexible to those new ideas as they come up. This isn't going to be a one-time initiative. Transformation really must be an ongoing mindset of growth and continuous evolution. Our goal is to foster a culture where reflection, renewal, and responsiveness to change are woven into the fabric of St. John's life and mission. By embracing this mindset, we can ensure that the work that we begin now continues to inspire and guide us well into the future. The past year has been an inspiring journey for our team, and we're profoundly grateful for the trust you've placed in us. Through our work together on this proposal, we've deepened our appreciation for the St. John's community and its rich history of love, faith, and outreach. We prayerfully present these recommendations with the hope that the congregation will embrace them with open hearts as we collectively move toward a stronger and increasingly vibrant future. We also thank you for the opportunity to share this vision. We'll now take some time to open up for questions. And I'll sort of facilitate questions, but invite my colleagues on the transformation team to join me in responding.